My name is Phil Perazio, and I'm a urologic oncologist, a surgeon. Like many of you, I absolutely love what I do, and I would not choose another profession. But I have struggled with professional identity, practice efficiency, and wellness over the years. Operate with Zen is a podcast designed to explore a mindful approach to surgery and to being a surgeon. By discussing these struggles and mindful solutions, I hope together we can create a community of strong and healthy surgeons. Enjoy. Welcome to this episode of Operate with Zen. Today, I have the great pleasure of being joined by Dr. Diana Londoño. Diana, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thank you so much for this. I'm so grateful to be here. I really just love just the whole concept name of your podcast and all the guests you've had. I think this is fantastic what you're doing. So I'm just grateful to be here. So thank you so much for having me. But yes, I am Diana Londoño. I'm a urologist. I am in Los Angeles, and I'm one of the few who is Latina and female and urologist. So right now there's 0.05% of us. So a little bit of a unicorn, but this is what is fun and superpower for me and exciting because I think there's so much room to grow. But I have many roles, and one of the roles is obviously a urologist. I'm a mom of 2 kids. And I'm also the founder of physiciancoachsupport.com, which is a platform for peer support for any physician that I founded after I, went through the coals of fire burnout myself, twice already. So I founded it because, I found it really important to use my skills as a certified life coach to help others in a greater way, because we are really, suffering from that, not only in urology, but in all, fields and specialties. So it's just something that is really needs to be hopefully addressed more, talked about more, and really just brought out to the light to what are the steps we can do to help each other and others.
Well, it's wonderful. And Diana, like many of us now in 2022, you and I met through social media, and we've had wonderful conversations since then, some through Zoom and some through other social media platforms, and look forward very much to meeting you in person. But our conversations have been great, and I know us talking today is going to help a lot of people too.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I think that's the power. That's we don't have to shy away from tools. They're tools. And especially in the pandemic, we used to be all in person. And then when we can't operate, when we can't be seeing patients, there's a tool called telehealth, televideo, and it can be so powerful. We can embrace it, and we don't lose the humanity of interaction or taking care of a patient in any way, but we can just use it and combine it and still have meaningful conversations, whether it's a patient or it's with a colleague or friends, and still, have that connection and not lose that importance of that.
Yeah. So I want to spend a fair amount of time talking about coaching. I got certified as a coach. I can't even remember. I think it was right before the pandemic, actually. But I got certified as a coach. It's been a huge part of who I am in my professional development. I'd love to hear your story about coaching, how you got started, how you got into it, and where you are now.
Oh, well, that was a surprise. I didn't know you were certified. It's fantastic. So yeah, for me, it was during my second, round of burnout, and it really was very different than the first one. But the second one was really, a whole year's worth, and it was during the pandemic, and it was really having the physical manifestations of like chronic stress / burnout. And it was really manifesting physically in symptoms or diseases. And for me, it was, couldn't sleep. I woke up every few hours. I was, grinding my teeth, like stress grinding my teeth. Bruxism, I learned the word for that. So when you're grinding your teeth, and I destroyed them, I got, I had to get a root canal, and I got an abscess, which was painful to say the least. And I had asthma from it. I got GERD. I was in Britonics. I was a little bit of a mess. And I even got, at the end of it, I got like joint pain, and my rheumatoid factor went up, even though I don't have rheumatoid arthritis. But I mean, every little organ system was really affected, including chest pain. And I used to run cross country. So, I mean, I could run, I was still running, but I literally couldn't run across the room because I had chest pain. Like I was dying of COVID, but I didn't have COVID because believe me, I checked 100 times and it wasn't COVID. But, you know, it's sort of like we sometimes don't even have the awareness of what it is. And we think it's something else always. And we are kind of like the worst patients as well. But I didn't know what it was. I just knew physically something was wrong, which was my body screaming like, hello, stop the stress. And that's how your body is so intelligent, is telling you something is wrong. You need to listen, stop. And I didn't, because I didn't know what this could be all manifesting. So I was in a very dark place, not just physically with all these things happening, but also my mindset. It was like really negative, and I was just, everything's so awful. And, it wasn't fun to be around. I definitely probably didn't laugh for quite a while, and I'm actually like to laugh and make jokes all the time, but I really hadn't in a long time. And I wasn't depressed per se, because my first round I was in Zoloft, but this time I really wasn't depressed. I just was like Debbie Downer, really. I mean, it wasn't fun. And I started, I don't know how, social media again. Somebody says something about life coach, and I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. But then I started kind of learning more. Oh, well, they're a life coach and they went to this school, and what is this? And there's a podcast, and I started listening to podcasts about life coaching. And slowly, just by learning about life coaching, which is to me really just about Buddhist principles of awareness and mindfulness, then I started to kind of feel a little better, kind of have a little different outlook in life. And I thought, well, like, this kind of looks good. I mean, I think I'm ready to get coached by somebody. But then I started looking around and I saw, well, if I'm going to spend $5,000 to be coached for 7 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever, what next? Like, what's going to happen in week 10? Like, I'm just going to be like, oh, there it is. Will I go back to maybe my same patterns? I don't know. So I thought, well, maybe I could just be a coach. I mean, I'll just pay more, obviously, but maybe I can use that in some way that I don't know. And it's just a skill, just like I have, all these diplomas are just skills that maybe I can use somehow. So that's how I kind of went into, becoming a life coach. And it really was a first step, and really then diving a lot deeper into a lot more things, not just of the awareness and, the coaching 101, which is, your thoughts, into your feelings, your actions, your results, but really just diving deeper into a lot more things, and really started to read a lot, and kind of got back my love for reading, and just started reading, learning about how does the brain work, how does so many things work, how do you dive deeper, meditation, like neurochemistry, all this stuff that really just was like, wow, this book. And I really kind of blossomed from, learning at that point.
Yeah, I got to say, there's so many similarities in our story, and I experienced a very similar thing. I was really struggling, and I want to point out too, there's been a number of episodes this season where our partners, our colleagues throughout surgery, throughout medicine, have talked about both physical and the mental, emotional strain of burnout and we'll stick with that term for now. But the physical manifestations, when you're an otherwise young, healthy person, you should not be grinding your teeth. You should not have GI upset on a routine basis. That doesn't have another explanation, right? And as you said, the body manifestations of the stress we are going through and put ourselves through can be tremendous. And the first sign is often recognizing that. And when you look backwards, I know in my personal experience, I call it, we all have kind of our sentinel burnout event. But if you look backwards, we've been cycling in and out of burnout for years. I had an episode of gout with no triggers. I had eosinophilic esophagitis. I ground my teeth. I mean, these are things that are not necessarily normal for healthy 20 and 30-year-olds as they're progressing through an early career. So, so I just want to highlight that and normalize that these are things that we all experience and can experience, but they should also be triggers that something else is going on, and to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and your body, like I said, is so, I mean, I didn't really realize this earlier after you go through it now, I'm like, oh yeah. And then that actually, I mean, there's so many gifts to my burnout story, but one of them really is, of course, you learn actual true empathy for other people and patients, and then realizing that stress is such a big part of, disease and life, and my patients that come, I'm a general urologist. I'm not I'm not a specialist, but I'm general. And really, I started just looking at, and that has been studied too. I mean, 80% of all doctor visits are stress related somehow. And it's true. When people come to me and it's their pelvic pain and their overactive bladder and all these things, even like kidney stones, because when people start taking unhealthy food choices to numb their emotions and their things, and then they become metabolic syndrome, and that leads to kidney stones. And it's just like, what is the root cause? And the root cause is this stress, these emotions we don't know how to process or are aware of, and then we numb it with something. It's either gonna be alcohol or food or TikTok or porn or something. We're numbing our emotions because we don't know what to do with them. And then also it's manifesting into, yes, the way that you're coming to see me with, like, pelvic pain or testicle pain or all the stuff we see as urologists. And if we just say, oh, here's your Motrin and I don't know what, like, it doesn't get better. And we get frustrated as physicians because we're like, oh, we hate ball pain, right? This is so painful. But once you address like the stress and you ask them like, whoa, that's interesting. So this happened 6 months ago. And like, was there anything else happening around time? Like, maybe something at work, maybe did somebody die? Was there an illness? Like what happened? Like just maybe right before. And then you see like, right? Like their face changes, the tears start, all this stuff, because you really address their pain point. And then it's sort of like you address it, you give them tools to figure out what we're going to do. And it's like, they relax, right? Like somebody addressed the elephant in the room that nobody ever wanted to talk about or poke or care about or know what to do with. But when you do that, it really is actually really transformational. And I really think you help people in a different way that is, more meaningful and more long lasting, because then they address and not only to come to see me, but, then maybe they don't need a cardiologist later, and they don't need the GI specialist for their weird irritable bowel syndrome that is stress related. So, then I can hopefully get rid of a lot of other specialties that they don't need or other medications that they don't need, because we address what's really going on in their life. They just haven't processed grief or the fact that 8 of their family members died within the last year and they haven't processed all that. So there's just so much to it. And not everybody has to do that, and you don't have to be a psychourologist like I am, but it really to me has been so rewarding, especially because then I tell them like, yeah, this is stress, and they don't believe it because I didn't believe it and I understand it. But I say, listen, I tell them what happened to me. I tell them like the scars that I have from it, and they're like, oh, maybe you're right. So to me, it's like a gift, not only for other physicians. I can try to tell you, hey, like the cilantro in your tea, that's called burnout, like you have it. Or for patients, that stress is so powerful and it can really manifest into disease. And it does, and it really does.
I think that's an incredible story, and I think people really need to listen to that and just take the time to create space for your patients. Let them talk to you. They'll tell you often what's going on. You just got to be there, and it's so easy to want to, as surgeons, to want to put our finger on the problem and fix that proximal problem right there. But there's so much more going on often, and
Yeah.
I would say it on the flip side as a specialist. I see it. Somebody comes in with a problem, and it's so easy to just address that problem. Kidney mass, prostate cancer, testicular, whatever it may be. Yep, we're just going to remove that and you're going to be fine. But really, the deep and meaningful relationships come when you have the conversation about, okay, this is going to be okay, or this is not going to be okay. But what does that mean to your life? How are we going to allow this to influence your life or not influence your life? And one of my favorite conversations with patients is saying, hey, listen, part of the reason we treat cancer so you can do the things you enjoy doing. So what's on that list? What do we want to be thinking of as we make every decision in this process? So it's an awesome point, Diana, and I think it gets to all stages of disease that we deal with.
Yeah. And I mean, so sometimes people feel like, oh, I just actually was in this board meeting yesterday, and one of the actually she was a physical therapist, but there was all physicians and one physical therapist, and we talked. Her comment was, there's no holistic care, like say in urology and things. And I'm like, you know what? I think there is. I think so many people and holistic people get also very uncomfortable, of course. But when I'm talking about holistic, I'm not saying burn incense and do essential oils. I'm talking about treating the person not as an organ system, like not just a kidney or bladder, but like what else, like you said, is happening in your life? What is important? How is your heart truly, or your heart disease is going to affect how we treat your bladder, or the fact that you can't walk because you just broke your leg. And we have to kind of adjust with that and understand that that may play a factor in when we do your surgery. And we're just not so laser focused on like the bladder and not care about the whole picture. And we sometimes forget that. And when we do, patients actually feel that, and they know that it's kind of like, okay, well, they didn't really realize like I have big old cast, and like, how am I going to get from point A to B? And, maybe if they just realize that or ask about that, or like little things, like people come with t-shirts that are meaningful to them, or a hat, or like, oh, their earrings, and they tell you a whole story about it that is just so fun. And it makes a difference. And, maybe it'll take 2 minutes extra. And I know we're constrained by time, but the long-term effect of that presence, like you said, is so powerful. And it's just like, I mean, that's why I came to medicine, was like about the human connection and the humanity. And yes, we can all learn to be technicians and operate and diagnose and prescribe it. What about that person in front of you that has many stories and, just wants the same thing, we all want, which is connection, being listened to and being loved and cared for. We all want that, but especially as a patient. And if you've ever been a patient, it's really a scary place. I mean, whether you're a physician or not, but especially sometimes when you are, because you know all the other stuff, it's scary. You want some compassion and you want somebody to be like, it's okay, it's going to be okay. Or like I said, maybe it isn't, but just give you that space to process without just like like so fast we are, surgeons all the time, like boom, 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 let's go. And I think that's a gift, and that's a gift that you are modeling for so many other, surgeons and, urologists, to really be an example of like, wow, like there's this guy, Phil, like, oh my God, who are you? And really that's how I reached out to you. I'm like, who are you? I'm like, you must be a unicorn. I need to meet you, because every time I find somebody talks about these kind of things, I'm like, oh my God, like my heart gets all excited. And like I said, that's how we connected, really, because I was like, wow, I just love what you said about that. That was so important. And I honor that and appreciate that about you as a being, and not as a doer, that we're all doers, but as a being. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for saying that. And I love that the concept of being a being, not a doer, is a very Buddhist thought, and a very grounding thought process, and something that's really works for some people, and kind of thinking on how to ground yourself and really think about who you are as a physician. You could be somebody who operates on bladders, or takes out prostates, or kidney stones, or sexual dysfunction, or whatever it may be. Or you could be a surgeon, or a physician, or a urologist who interacts with people and helps people. And I would say the latter is a much more fulfilling role for many people. And if it's not, and if you are truly just a doer and a technician, then that's okay too. But own that,
Yeah.
own that persona too. And the more true you are to who you are and what you want to be, the more meaningful interactions you're going to get, and you're going to find the right patients for your practice too.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touch about the being and the Buddhist thing, but then it's like, I mean, I think the deeper question is, who are you? Which is that really important question, either existential or whatever it is, but who are you? And then we're diving deep into talking about these roles, because still physicians, still surgeons, still, these are just roles of the ego, right? Because they're not a true identity. Then we have to really say, because anytime you say I am this, even though I'm a mom, I mean, those are fleeting, not they're temporary roles. Even if you're a college student, or you're, they're going to become like at some point, like as you go through as a mom, like maybe you'll be an empty nester. When we hold down so much to these roles, then we really suffer, especially in medicine or surgeons. We're so attached to, I'm a surgeon, I'm a cancer surgeon, I'm a whatever it is, that for some reason, if that were to change in some way, shape, or form, it's like total crisis. I mean, it is a crisis. You're gonna go into depression and darkness and circle this vortex of like, who am I? Oh my God, I cannot operate. What can I be or do? But then if you let go of that, all these temporary roles, which are again temporary, they're gonna go away some point, and really focus on like, who are you as a being, as a soul, and like get a little deeper on that, and talk about the soul and the purpose and what it is our being is, joyful, enthusiastic, a loving being, not a doer, right? Then it's like, yeah, these roles may come and go. And then you don't suffer with this attachment of holding on to it. And it's not like a law of like apathy that like, oh, I don't care. It's a law of like letting go of the outcome and just showing up. Again, not as a technician of like some renowned cancer center, who I am, blah, 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 and all these expensive artwork, which are diplomas, but showing up as like, I'm here as a human being that has these tools to take care of you and just be there for you and listen and truly try to go back to the basics of what physician is, which is a healer and a teacher. So how am I going to heal you today? How am I going to listen and teach you the things that I have learned for many, many years so you can understand what's going on in your disease process or symptoms? How can I then give you power and knowledge to really just like, at the end of the day, when you do that for patients, they become like awesome patients. I mean, like the compliance, when they understand why you do stuff, like people are like compliant. They like follow up all the time. I mean, like my patients follow up all the time and they take all their meds and, and I'm like, oh, wow, like they really do. But they do because I spend time to say, this is why you take this. This is what this is for. Like this is what Flomex does. This is why we're doing this. This is not why we're doing this. This is what the prostate does or doesn't do. If you don't explain that to patients, people are like, what? Like, why am I doing that? It's like, I don't understand. Like, there's 5 blue pills and one red one. Like, I don't know which one. And they're not engaged. But if you engage them with knowledge as a physician, like it's such a different like relationship, because you really invest because you love them. Like I love my patients and it goes both ways. I love them and then they give me so much love. And, I trust them to take the best decision for their life with the tools they have and the knowledge I give. But then they also, trust me. And if they don't trust me, like, I don't operate on people that don't trust me. We don't have relationships ongoing if you can't trust me. I don't. Maybe some people do, and that's okay. But like, I won't operate if you don't trust me. And I'm very open. I said, if you don't trust me, like we cannot have this relationship because it's built in trust and love. And I love you. But if you are apprehensive, it's not going to work out. It's just not. And so I'll refer you to an amazing colleague who will take care of you, but it's just not going to work out. And there's many choices. We all have a choice. So choose the one that you're going to trust because that's really important, especially as a surgeon, but in any specialty, because complications are going to happen. And that's just part of like being a physician. So I'm going to hold your hand and guide you and love you through it when it happens. But you have to trust me that, I'm guiding you, your hand through this process.
Yeah. I love what you said and how you started this as saying, we are teachers. You said we are healers and teachers as physicians. And part of that is, once again, getting back to kind of creating space and time for patients. And the time constraints are real. It's hard. So tell us, and creating time and space doesn't necessarily mean, okay, I'm going to add 5 minutes on to every visit to make, right, to make more time for the patients. Tell us how you create time and space in clinic for your patients. How do you do that? Nuts and bolts. There are learners. There are a lot of trainees who listen here or people who are just starting their practices. Now, as somebody who's seasoned in this, how do you create time and space in your clinic?
Yeah, I mean, the time, everyone has the same amount of time, whether you're seeing patients or in the 24 hours of the day, because it's the same concept. Like people tell me, I don't have enough time. Forget just seeing patients, but like, I don't have time. Well, that's that scarcity mindset. We all have the same 24 hours. And then people do all kind like doing a lot of things in those 24 hours. So how are you viewing the time? Like when you think about anything, like I have enough time, I have enough money, there's enough of everything. Like it kind of almost like slows down like the worst speed of it. Like there's this, even today, I mean, I had really like 12 minutes to get ready because I was exercising. I was trying to get my kids to come across the street. And I'm like, I have 12 minutes. I'm like, 12 minutes. I'm going to like shower, do my makeup, get ready like for this. I'm like, I have enough time. I'm like, I'm not going to say there's not enough time and start freaking like a squirrel. I'm like, there's plenty of time. And like somehow like it just made it. I was in time. And so it's sort of this mindset, what you put your mind to and your attention, it really becomes your reality. And then with patients, I think it's really important to me, and I know, well, there's scribes and all this, but I'm a little bit old school still. I still write stuff in paper, and I kind of pre-chart and write my notes on paper. And so when I see a patient, I already pre-charted, so I know what's there. I know what I'm going to actually do for them. I just kind of have to talk to them. But I don't type anything when I'm with a patient, and some people can be fantastic at it. But for me, it's distracting. I really just sit down and I look at people in the eyes, and I just look at them, and maybe make some little notes, but that's it. And I sit down, I don't stand. I really look at them, eye to eye. And that really somehow extends the time, because you can really spend 6 minutes with them and people feel like they were heard, and people feel like you have, empathy and compassion for them. And I mean, you can look at my reviews. I mean, I have 5 stars. Why? Because I am present for them, whether it's 5 minutes or like 20 minutes or whatever. And like, I actually don't spend that much time. I don't, but somehow people feel that. And why? Because I listen. I use words that are like, oh, it seems like. I repeat what they tell me, because that is an active listener. I'm repeating what you're telling me. Oh, so it seems like it started this time, and they're like, yeah. And so, I am actually truly listening. You can't repeat back what the patient says if you're not listening. It's just not going to happen. So you truly are not listening. And then you miss like 80% of the history, right? It's like from the history, you get all the answers. So I kind of do that when I see them. Before COVID, I was like a little more touchy. So I would always, like touch them on the shoulder, or like, a little huggy sometimes. But now not as much. But, that touch, like a simple touch, can go such a long way. When people are struggling, they just need that human connection or touch. And some people don't feel comfortable. I understand. And I don't do it for some people that don't, but some people really like appreciate that human touch. So like, these are like just little things that I do. And I really, like I said, I don't type in the interaction with the patient. I just like little notes, and then I'll quickly, dictate it after. And I finish on my notes. Like at 5 o'clock, I'm like done with all my notes. I never take stuff home. And I just really, I'm focused. It's like a marathon sprinting for me. I'm like, go, 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 go. Like, I don't start chit-chatting with everybody else. I don't do other things, because I'm focused on seeing the patient on time, not making them wait. They don't wait, getting my notes done, and like really being focused on that and not being distracted with a million things. And then I can get out in time, because I'm just focused and not like doing things that are not part of what I'm there to do.
Yeah. And just point out, there's data here. I mean, there are studies done in I think they were the 90s. And I'll try and put them in the notes of this podcast, where, physicians who, same things you said, sat down with patients, made eye contact, really listened, didn't write their notes in front of the patients. Patients had a perception of kind of, to use a relativity term, like time dilation. They thought they were in that room for much longer than they actually were. Whereas where physicians were just writing notes and not really making eye contact, it's actually the opposite phenomenon. I think they're in the room for a much shorter amount of time than they actually are, subjectively. So it's a really important thing. And I'll just make a quick point, just as a contrast. I do jot notes when sometimes when I'm getting a complex history, just so I remember, especially things like family history, which you may forget some of those details. But I always make a point of pushing the computer out of the way, sliding closer to the patient, and really sitting down face to face and getting rid of the electronics, getting rid of kind of the note taking, to really show people that you are present. And you're right, that's where you make the connection, is in that eye contact, in that conversation, in being fully there in the moment with them, which is being mindful.
Yeah. I mean, there actually was a paper about this in the Journal of Urology, like I think 3 months ago. And, it was talking about the perceived, like how patients perceive the time, that you spend with them, and how artificial intelligence and this and that. And I mean, I don't know. It really kind of made me cringe, because I'm like, really, like that, that's what we're going towards. I mean, how about we just actually have presence? Like you said, how about we just go back to the basics and look at people in the eyeballs and just listen? I mean, that's all you have to do. Or, why don't you maybe ask people that have amazing reviews, what are they doing right? Instead of doing all these complicated chi-square things, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's fantastic, but why don't you ask people that truly are, I know that can be skewed, but, the people that are really doing a good job of listening, and patients see that, feel that, and say that, what are they doing? So maybe you could emulate that somehow, and that would be more efficient and more, just a different way of doing things. And again, without all this artificial intelligence, which I do appreciate technology, there's a role for it. But then sometimes we just have to go to the basics. And to me, actually, I think I wrote an article about that, how to improve your patient reviews and Kevin MD, because I was like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? And it was just interesting. But yeah, presence is important. There is a perception of time, it's for you too, and for me. Like if I'm having fun, right, you always feel like, oh, that felt like so fast. And when you're not having fun, or you're having a negative mindset about being at a meeting, that meeting is going to go way longer than you expected. But if you have to be at a meeting, let's say, and you have to be there anyway, why don't you make the best out of it? Why don't you try to learn something? Why don't you try to see what could be good of that hour that you have to be there anyway? I see that a lot, when sometimes these are mandatory things, and I get it. I probably don't have to be there either, don't want to, but if I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna have my best attitude, because otherwise that time thing is gonna feel a lot longer than if I just came in with a positive attitude. So again, it could go for anything we do in life, whether the patient feels it, whether we're in a situation of how we perceive time. It's our mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that mindset in creating space also happens in coaching. So talk us through some of your basics of coaching, kind of, how were you trained? How do you think about coaching? How do you build that interaction with your, whether it's clients or colleagues or whoever it may be that you're coaching?
Yeah, I was trained, I'm gonna say kind of secular, right? It was just, your thoughts create your feelings into, actions and results. It's just kind of, that's sort of the model, and they call it the model. And I think that's good. And I think that is a very good start. But then we have to go a little deeper, and then there's so much stuff like whys. Like I'd really go into the whys, and I think there's I don't know if it's a book or who said that there's like the 10 whys. If you go down 10 whys, you get to the root cause of things. And sometimes you have to keep going to ask like why. Like a 5-year-old, like why? When your 5-year-old kids start asking you why, I like why number 4, you're like, because I said so, right? Because you get kind of exacerbated. But you get chipping to your beliefs of like, why are you saying that to even your kids? Like there's some belief there, and beliefs are fine. They're just thoughts we kept thinking so much and now we believe they're true. But sometimes do you want to change that belief that you grew up with? Sometimes is that really what you want to do? And you have to spend time to examine that. And the time to examine these beliefs, the time to, slow down the movies of like life, because life is kind of like a movie or a play. And instead of just being reactive to everything, you slow down that gap between, what you're thinking perhaps to what you're going to maybe say or do. That there is a gap if you practice like a little bit of mindfulness and peace and, joy and gratitude. When you are in those states of which are calm states, you're not going to like react and start barking back at somebody on social media and go in a Twitter war. You're going to be like, that's interesting. They just said that, like, how am I going to react? Can I say it with love, first of all? Do I have to say anything? Is there something kind I can say? Like you can slow it down instead of like, you can't believe it. When you're in a reactive state or in a very stressful state, like the little squirrel in the street or where I was, during my burnout, anything that is said, there's no space between the thought or the action or reaction. You just like go and plow down and start, yelling or anger. And, a lot of people are in that state, and I've been there too. But when you start diving deeper into coaching and maybe meditation or your quiet time or, different states of mind to slow down, like the accelerator and the gas, you're going to find that time to decide, first of all, to know that you have a choice. Okay. That's an awareness. You have a choice. And then choose how you will react to whatever situation. And hopefully the reaction or action or result is really like based out of love. And I think that's so important to always lead with love. And I think when you do, the result is always going to work out in some magical way. But when you do it out of fear or out of anger, it like never works out. And I also have lived that because, COVID was all fear and I was super OCD and I was like in overdrive and, it was in a bad place, but it was all fear. And even people going on these wars between vaxxers, non-vaxxers, it's all fear and it's all anger, and it didn't lead to anything productive. Instead of kind of stepping back and trying to acknowledge the other person who was also afraid, different viewpoints, but same fear. And when we acknowledge the other person, it's very different what the outcome is. And it even goes back to patients. I mean, when patients come, I think the magic is, at least to me, is like they all have a fear. It doesn't have to be cancer, but they all have a fear. And when you address that fear, it's like magic, right? Like you uncovered what they're there for. They're afraid they can't have kids. They're afraid they're not gonna, be able to travel because they have to pee every 15 minutes. They're afraid of something. So address that fear and that pain point. And it's like, again, it's like magic. It's so rewarding. It's so fun to really, make a difference of like what they're scared, because they may not say it, but you can maybe, I don't know, I feel it. I mean, I can feel it, I can pick up on it, but you're not going to pick up on it if you're on the computer. You're going to miss the signs, but they're there. Patients, like, maybe look at their body language, maybe look when they kind of like stiffen up. There's little signs when people are reacting positively or they start getting scared, like things change in their face, their body language, like their energy. I mean, all that stuff changes. And sometimes it's hard to pick up if you're so busy, with a computer thing, or not present because you're thinking about like, oh, what do I have to do? Like, then I have to do the laundry and then I have to go pick up this. And, if you're not present, you can't pick up all the stuff that is happening because you're in a different world and you miss a lot of things.
Yeah. So at physician coach support, tell us nuts and bolts. What kind of people do you work with? Kind of what's the schedule? How do you work with them to instill these concepts and these processes to get over those fears and anxieties and help give them the tools to kind of move forward in a more positive way?
Yeah, I mean, this is a different, because it's not like a 6-week, 12-week, whatever program it is. This is really everybody that is there, physician coach support. What it is, it's a platform. You go on the website, you pick a time that works for you in your time zone, and you see what's available, and you book a little Zoom appointment. You get a reminder, here's your Zoom time, Monday, 5:00. Here it is. This is the coach that'll be there. So everybody there is a volunteer. They are all physicians, we're peers, and they're all certified life coaches. So it's not for like a long-term transformation that you will get with something longer, like just like if you go to the gym, for 6 months. I mean, much different than if you go once. But sometimes we're just in a place where we can't get out of the wheel, the hamster wheel spinning thoughts, or like you feel like an imposter, or you don't know what to do with a decision, or you're just angry, or you're just feeling like a little hopeless, or you don't see the like light at the end of the tunnel. You go, and then somebody's gonna just listen to you to see what's going on, and they're gonna help reframe like what's happening. They're gonna say like, well, that's interesting, is there any way we can see this a different way? I mean, just sort of coaching principles that we use, but to really reframe the situation, take down the emotional charge, process what's happening, really kind of get it out there and just help you, again, reorganize it, look at it a different way to just really help you in that moment. And again, it's not going to be the long-term thing, but it's just support, because sometimes you need somebody to talk to, but not like your best friend who's gonna, if you call your best friend, this is amazing, you should, but you're gonna like rant and rave and say like, yeah, it's terrible, blah, 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 they're the worst people, I can't believe he said that, he's the worst chief, yeah, he's terrible, and like nothing comes of that, right? Like you just kind of fester in this like negative cycle, and you just stay there. And it's good to vent, but there's not like a movement forward. And coaching really is like, okay, well, I see that that's happening. First of all, like, why? And then like, can we kind of get something through, like move forward, learn the lesson that was in that challenging time, what can you get from that? And just really have a little bit of a growth mindset, even with a 1-hour interaction. And then you just feel like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I can look at this way, or, well, that's right. Like maybe I was supposed to sort of learn a little bit of patience, and, or whatever it is. So it's a little bit different than long-term transformation, but it really is just to help, because sometimes people don't know where to go, and maybe they don't want to be at their own institution because, they do have coaching programs, but it's the people they work with, or maybe they're not truly peers. And we understand, like we have been there. Many of us have been through burnout, many of us had, like, you don't have to be in the same specialty. You're just a physician. You know how this stuff goes. You know all the pressures, the roles that we have, especially as women, and women is 51% of women physicians are burned out. Urology is crazy, right? 2020, we're number one. We were only surpassed in 2021, 2022, when all the COVID frontline specialties surpassed us, but we still stayed at 49%. And urology residents, second year residents, 65% burnout rates. I mean, this is like not good, right? It's a lot of people. So sometimes you don't know what to do. You feel the stigma, judgment, who knows? You don't want to go to a therapist. You don't need a therapist. Sometimes you need all of them, both. But like somebody's there to listen to you. I think that's like just that in itself, even if you never go, I hope that gives you a little bit of hope, like a little seed of like, there is good in this world. There are people who are physicians who are busy and have like, businesses of their own, but they're there because they believe in service and helping and abundance and love. I mean, they really truly align with that mission. And I think that's amazing. I mean, I don't know where else there is that. There really isn't that anywhere. And to me, that just gives me hope.
Yeah. And you draw a great contrast between kind of coaches and mentors and therapists. And just to kind of, once again clarify, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as I give you mine here. But a mentor is going to give you an answer, typically for something professional, right? I want to do this in my career. I'm thinking of doing that. Can you help? And a mentor will help kind of guide you step by step. A therapist will kind of sit and help you understand the why you may be experiencing emotional or psychological troubles. Coach does neither of those things, in my opinion. A coach, as you said, is someone there who's going to help you understand, help you develop, I call it kind of an inward expansion. Look inside to open your mindset to think more broadly and develop skills so the next time you come into a hard time, you don't need that coach per se. You've developed a skill set that allows you to get better. So just like a coach could help you with your tennis game by working on your forehand and your backhand, a life coach or a professional development coach or whatever term you want to use is going to help you with life skills to help you understand the situation you're in, how you're reacting with it, and what all the opportunities are to act in different ways. And sometimes, and not sometimes, but the hope is that you act in a better way than you would have without that coaching. And I think that's what we've all experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with that assessment. I think that is what it is. And it is very different. And sometimes you need all of them, of course. Like you need a therapist, because sometimes you need your neurotransmitters to be aligned again. They went wacky tacky. So you need some Zoloft, or you need something to calm all those neurotransmitters, because the stress just has you in a different place. And you need that too. And you need a coach, and you need your friends, right? To vent and yell and scream and be like, ah. And then you also need a mentor to say, yes, point A to point B. But a coach is not going to give you the answers. Like you have the answers. The answers are within you. They truly are. And, coaching is important, but then it's like you have to have that time to listen to the answers because they are within you. And that's the thing where meditation comes in, because you have to think about how the awareness, start thinking like, whoa, I'm getting triggered by this. What triggers me to act in a certain default way? There's a great kind of exercise you could do where you think about like during the day, every 30 minutes, are you acting in like your conditioned self, which is maybe like angry, bored, reactive, or are you acting in an authentic way, which is loving and joyful? And if you're not, like, maybe why? And then you start thinking like, oh yeah, well, and like I did that. And it's really interesting to me because mine is like, if I'm hungry, I get hangry and like I get reactive, and then I get annoyed. My default is annoyance. Not a fun, like cute, sexy thing, but I get annoyed. And if I'm hungry, if I'm tired, for sure. And if something reminds me, like, let's say, of like dad or mom, like, these triggers from childhood, then you revert to these conditioned ways to learn as a child, which, you could keep them, of course, but like, I don't want to keep them. I don't want to be default annoyed. When I get triggered, I want to, first of all, be like, oh, okay, here it comes. There's a trigger. Like, first of all, what are my needs? I need to sleep, forget everything. I need to take a nap. I need to eat so I don't become a reactive. And then, I want to be more loving and more kind and not bark at my husband when, he says something and I'm tired. I want to be a little bit different. So again, you don't have to do that. But if you want to do it, I mean, a coach is a great person that will help you with that. And, I hope you do want to do the work, and it's work. It's not easy. This stuff is like a lot of work. It's daily work. people ask me all the time, like, well, what's the difference between burnout 1 and 2? And it's going to be 3 probably, but I'm like, no, the difference is, well, now I work on it every single day, where I make time, I prioritize the time to spend time on some reflection on things that my intention for the day, the intention before I go to sleep, like my gratitude. I have a gratitude journal. I write down what I'm grateful for, because gratitude and stress cannot coexist at the neurotransmitter level, if you want to get nerdy, or at any level. It just really cannot. If you're in a state of gratitude, you cannot be stressed and worried. And even when I was trying to get ready, I'm like 12 minutes, oh my God. So I'm like, nope. I was like, I'm just grateful that, I had all this stuff. That was my thoughts. I'm like, I'm grateful because of this. I'm grateful that, at least I didn't have to do this and that. And I'm going to get there on time and it's going to be okay. Instead of being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because the worry is really praying for what you don't want. It doesn't help anything. Like if you worry, how is that helpful? It doesn't help you with anything. So instead of worrying and praying for what you don't want, like think about what you do want and like practice some gratitude. And that's going to be, I think, really transforming.
Yeah. There's a great saying, if there is a solution, there's no reason to worry. And if there's no solution, worrying is not going to help. So, it really does kind of put that in perspective. But I love what you said about putting in the work. And it's true. If you want to be grateful and kind, and if you want to kind of do these things, you have to work at them. And I love your exercise every 30 minutes. Hard to do every day, but certainly it highlights that you do have to work at these things. And I know you and I both do. We have mindfulness practices. You mentioned journaling and gratitude, but take us through your daily routine, if you don't mind. Give people an understanding of how you get all of these things done and still have a mindful existence. They've heard from me enough, so let's hear your routine.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't do this when I was 12, but I definitely have learned it through, going through burnout. These are the gifts that you get. I mean, it's like the post-traumatic growth, right? Like that's what you hope for. Because when it's dark, there's going to be light and there's going to be a season. But like my day usually starts probably like 5:30, almost 5:30 or 6. And I really now wake up without any alarm, zero. I never have an alarm. I just wake up at 6. And I used to be like, my role was, oh, I'm a night owl and like I stay up late and I'm not an early morning person. But now I'm like, yeah, I look forward to 6 a.m. At 6 a.m. I wake up, I get my notebook and I write down. Depends. Like sometimes I write down what I dream about, because to me that's fun. Like, what did I dream? Like real quick, I'll write it. And if I can't remember, then I just write down what I'm grateful for. And then something I do, if it's 5:30, I'll do social media. But what I do social media is I kind of scour things and then I try to like put positive messages. Like I'm not there to listen to all the negativity. I'm there like, oh, somebody's struggling. I'm going to send them a message of like love, hope. Like, I love this. This is great. So I use my social media for like uplifting. That's what I use my 15 minutes for. Then I get at 6, I get up and I go and I, listen to my coach, my meditation coach, Disha Phillip, and we meet every morning. She's in the East Coast, but I do the replay and we talk about all these things like mindfulness and, abundance and like all the laws of, detachment and karma and all these things that, really take it to a deeper level. And then when I do my meditation, either whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on the time, because at 7 a.m. then I go downstairs and I start breakfast for my kids. And then we have breakfast and then trying to get everybody ready and get them out the door. And, at 8:30, then it's like I start work and then, it's work. And then I try to really, depending if I get out early or not, do like 1 hour. For me, is yoga. You don't have to be cliche. If it's baking, do baking. If it's like gardening, do gardening. If it's like working your motorcycle, do that. But I used to run a lot. And I was a runner in college and I was running really, for this advanced maternal age of mine. I mean, I was running like 8-minute miles. That's pretty good for me. So I was doing really well. But then I said, you know what? I'm tired of running. I'm tired of like literally running spiritually, let's say, and physically. I'm going to just slow it down and I'm going to go back to yoga because I used to do it a lot. And I never incorporated the spiritual component of yoga. And yoga just means yoke or to unite. It means unite the mind, body, and spirit. That's yoga. We know it in the West as the poses, like the asanas, they call them. But that's just like one little tiny bit. Because what you do on the poses on the mat, it's like hopefully what you take outside of the mat. So if you're trying to do flexibility on the mat and trying to do pose, you want to take that outside of the mat and learn flexibility in the real world. Like, this didn't go well, but can I be flexible and like, okay, well, I'll do it this time, or like, okay, I'll do this case a little bit later. Like, be flexible. If you're trying to learn strength, well, like strength in many other realms, like strength to have courage, to speak up, to say, no, I deserve that raise or whatever. It's like strength outside of the mat. So you'll learn all these things, outside of just doing like an hour poses. And then it's just really breathing, and you got to breathe, because if you don't breathe, you're going to die. So breathing is important. And conscious breathing is really important. It's going to slow down the sympathetic cortisol response, and you're going to go into parasympathetic, and you're going to like slow down. And breathing is really important. And then when you do it consciously, you feel much different, because now you're releasing like serotonin and dopamine and all this stuff that makes you happy, and it's in Zoloft. So if you can get it without Zoloft, like, hey, I'm all for it. Like, I don't want to be taking pills if I don't need to. I want my like natural Zoloft. So that's like breathing. And that's when you do that, again, you can do it in yoga. You can do it if you go hiking. You can do it if you go exercising. I mean, you are breathing. And even when I ran, I never ran with music. I ran just to listen to my breath. I would like listen, like I would run and listen to my breath rhythm. And that was sort of like my meditation. I didn't know it was a meditation, but it was a meditation. So now I have the language for it, but I was sort of doing that before in a different way. And I want to do it a different way. But again, people think yoga is cliche. That's fine, not a problem. But it's learning so many things outside of the mat, which is really important for my life. And yeah, like for me, it's like flexibility, like hip openers, and just flexibility outside of being so like rigid, black and white, and like seeing there's like so many shades of gray that I can go. And that's an important thing for me to learn and practice. And it's a practice, like just like yoga is a practice, just like surgery is a practice. You're practicing every day. Well, I want to practice, a growth mindset of like being a better version of me, being like not what I used to be a year ago or 5 years ago. I want to be a better version, a more loving version, a more patient version, all these versions that, are hopefully better than the last. That's the good news. Like you only get better.
Yeah. No, and anybody who has listened to this podcast before knows I love yoga too. And I love the metaphors. I think that's one of the things that's really tremendous in yoga. There's so many metaphors about balance and pain and struggle and giving yourself grace and giving others grace, because you're going to fall out of your tree pose. You're going to land on your behind sometimes. You just can't hold the balance. And it's much better to smile and laugh it off than to bring some anger into it too. And that's one of my favorite ways to approach yoga. But I wanted to highlight some of the things about your day that I think are really important that you said. First of all, is understanding your chronotype. Are you a morning person or are you an evening person? And it doesn't matter. The most important thing is knowing who you are and kind of owning that. Waking without an alarm is a huge sign of good sleep hygiene. And people, it's something to strive for, whether it's 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 2 in the afternoon. Waking without an alarm is a great sign of good sleep hygiene, meaning your body is getting the rest that it needs and naturally waking up to the point you need to. And listen, it's not going to happen every day for surgeons. It's not going to happen every day for trainees. We get it. But that is something to strive for. And I think it is something that we can see. You mentioned journaling and assigning gratitude. Great ways to set intentions for the day and put yourself in a proper mindset. And I love it. And even the points about being positive on social media. And I've done that. I try to do that every day. And I haven't got it into my normal routine yet, but especially when I'm having a tough day, or I try to, just sit there and write something positive on social media. And not enough of us do that. And it has to be to a random person. Can't be to somebody right?
Anybody that like you like run across some feed and you're like, oh, like I don't know them, but I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna jump in the bandwagon of like everything's terrible. I'm gonna just give you some love or send you love and gratitude, whatever it is, just something positive. And like I don't know you, and actually that's how I got to know some people, because I'm like I reach out to them or I send them a message, and then now we're doing projects together because I send them a message of like I resonate with that, or here's my support, whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, it's some people say do not wake up and start social media. I get that, but I'm not there to like absorb all that negativity. I'm there to like just give support and then move on, and do that, not my intention. And even at night too, that's what I try to do social media for. Like I try to give some loving kindness to somebody, somebody that needs it. We all need it. We all want to receive it. And it's a gift when we receive it. And we have to also receive it. It's a gift to give, but it's a gift to allow to receive the love. Some people are not ready for it. They're in a place where they cannot, but if hopefully they do, and other people, also say, well, man, that's a nice way. You didn't have to like say such negative things. You can have a different viewpoint. It's sometimes refreshing to see that.
Yeah. It's a great point. And the last thing I want to point out is your actual time of kind of mindfulness and wellness in the day is somewhere between an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And that's not a tremendous time commitment. People just need to understand that you can do these things in relatively short amounts of time. And like, I love what you said, whether it's yoga or gardening or cooking or your motorcycle, whatever it may be, taking an hour for yourself throughout the course of a day is not too much to ask when you think about all of the time we waste on other things. And it's one of the ways I put it now is, where do you want to make that time investment? Is it in Netflix and the kind of less beneficial aspects of social media, or is it on something that's going to make you better, feel better, sleep better, live better, interact better with other people? And I think that's a no-brainer when you actually break it down and think about it. So and it doesn't have to be intense.
And we have so much time. I mean, one of the things we learn in coaching is like this thing like Monday, it's a Monday hour wonder, like you learn to like the whole week schedule everything, like every little thing, which actually is really helpful. And when you do, some people find out, oh my God, it's too restricting, but it isn't. When you start scheduling everything, you realize, first of all, how much time there is and how much more efficient you are, because at that time you're going to work on XYZ. And then at this time, you're going to work on XYZ. And at this time is your nap time, because I schedule my nap times. This is my time we're going to nap. This is my time we're going to exercise. And when you write it, especially for type A people, when you write it, you're going to do it because it's on the calendar. So it helps to be like, okay, I want to check it off, because people like to check it off with like color markers or whatever. But you're going to do it. You're going to trust yourself. You're going to do it. You're going to like pat yourself like, hey, I did it. And you realize you have so much time, because we feel we don't. But then if we break down your day and go through the time, you're going to see like there's a lot of time you were probably on TikTok and doing all kinds of stuff. At the same time, you say you don't have enough time, but you did have enough time. You just chose to use it for something else, which is fine. But just be aware that you're using it for something else. And there's so much time to do things. Just prioritize it a little bit different and have that awareness. And really, maybe just one day as an exercise, write it down. What did you do all day? Like hour by hour, you're going to see there's a lot of pockets of like time you could have done something perhaps different if you want to. So I think people are always surprised of, oh, wow, like this is what I'm doing with a day, or like I have this time, or I'm spending this much time on this, or, I thought I was spending time on something else and you're not.
Yeah. And I think it's a great point. There's so much creativity found in structure, right?
Mhm.
When you have your day scheduled out and you know where you're going to be from this time to this time to this time, you don't have to waste the brain power and space on that. Your brain is now free to do the higher executive functions that you want it to do. You can be creative and think out of the box and make all kinds of connections that you wouldn't have normally made because you were just trying to figure out, where do I need to be between 9 and 10? But if you know what you're doing already, you have so much more time and space and brain to be able to
And
do
you
those things.
also schedule your creative time. You have to
Yeah.
schedule that creative time. That time has to be the first thing we learn to schedule is your free time, your fun time, like you're going to the movies time. Like the fun stuff goes first, then you do all the other stuff. But like creative time is there. This is your 2 hours, whatever it is in your day, to like really creative time to like write, play your instrument, whatever it is that is creative for you. And then you have your time to write your journal articles, and then you have your time to do this. And then, yeah, you're not wasting time. Like, what time, where was that thing I was supposed to do? You know where things are going to be. Like, yeah, Saturday at 11, I'm going to do my laundry for 30 minutes. And like, that's your time for laundry. You're not like, oh, should I do it now? Should I do it then? I won't have time. No, you have time. It's Saturday at that time. Like, that's when you're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And it frees up time, it decreases the stress, and you're just like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Like, I know what we're going to do. It's much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on an hour. So I always like to give the guests time to, if there's anything you want to go over that we missed that you think is important to talk about, please let me know. There's a couple more things I want to ask you before we get to sign off. But if there's anything else you want to bring up at this point, now's a great opportunity.
We had great things. I mean, it's just so important. Really prioritize again, make time to slow down, prioritize that self-care. And it doesn't have to be going to the salon or whatever it is, or, just time for you. It's really important. Like, you matter, and like, you're worthy. Like, all that treasure chest of goodness is inside of you. You don't have to look outside of it for validation. We are told that we have to look outside or get all these titles and cars and person and all this stuff to be validating that we're worthy, but you don't. Like, you're worthy just by being and not by doing or purchasing or having stuff on top of you to look better. You're just worthy the way you are. And I hope people really can believe that, or spend time to just uncover the treasures that are inside of them, because it really will give them so much freedom and just transformation of living a life with freedom without worried about judgment or this or that, or like, oh, am I good enough? Like, is my car fancy enough? I mean, like, doesn't matter, like, you're worthy as you are whole.
I love that message. And I also I really want to point out how we started this conversation, how you identified yourself as a Latina in urology. And I think it's really important, as we see more and more women in the field, that we encourage that. And we get stronger through diversity. We get stronger through different people's backgrounds and thought processes, and people who think differently than us and make us better. And through that. So I applaud you for doing that, and continue to encourage women, Latinas, everybody from different backgrounds, to be in the field and to explore surgery, because it's a tremendous field. It has tremendous opportunities to interact with people, be mindful and thoughtful and present. And we look forward to having all kinds of people in the field.
Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, it's such a fun field, and we talk about fun things, and sadly, I mean, it's really important. I mean, of course, there's other people that are very passionate about it, but sadly, the truth is, Latinos and Blacks, I mean, we're left behind in like everything. But cancer screening, cancer outcomes, all the stuff, we're always left behind. And if you are Latina, and like, doesn't mean you have to be go for your communities, but sometimes, like, people will listen to your message if you look like the patient a little more, and they will trust you a little more sometimes. So if you have that gift of just being like, I didn't choose to be Mexican, and I just was born that way, but if that, by being that, I can use that to help somebody a little bit more, to teach them to speak their language, to understand the cultural differences of why they don't want to talk to me about this or that, or why they do, or why we think we should have pain and sex and that's okay as Latin people. Like, there's a lot of beliefs and a lot of things, but we can bring that knowledge that we have in our communities and just help people like a different way. And I think that's so powerful, and I hope it can really inspire people to do it. And it's just a fun specialty. It really is beautiful. We have long-term patients. I take care of like the wife and the husband and like the kids sometimes. It's just because the kids are 50, right? And because the other patients are 70, but it's just so fun. And I don't know. I just really hope people get excited about urology because it's fun. It's a fun specialty. The people, our colleagues are fun. We really try to joke and keep it lighthearted, but really do important work as well.
Yeah, I just, and I think I hope we're finally getting to the point where it's now, 2022 and beyond, where we acknowledge that there's disparities, and instead of just continue to acknowledging, reach down and picking the people up who need to be picked up and helping them and trying to overcome these issues, whether it's in patient care, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's what our specialties look like. It's time to reach down and pick the people up and erase those disparities rather than just acknowledging them.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, there's such a need. I mean, I was in the advisory board about raising women urologists and raising their voices, and how can we do this? Because it's really important. And leadership and mentorship and sponsorship. I mean, we talked about coaching a lot, but sponsorship is really important. And it doesn't have to come from woman to woman. I mean, and like, so many men have like just been so supportive and helpful for us women, and really have elevated us. But also, women, we have to help each other. We have to stop throwing dirt at each other, stop in the competitiveness, help each other. We're stronger together, but not just women with women, but like all of us. If we all rise together, we all lift each other up, right? So there's plenty for everybody to succeed. And again, that's an abundance mindset, but there is. We can all be successful. Like, we don't have to be this competitive, worried. Like, we can all succeed. And that's something beautiful that we got to think about and really like own and understand that we all can succeed. It's not me, you versus that comes from fear. That comes from, again, nothing that good is going to come out of when we're in fear. But if we're in love-based thoughts and actions, it's very different, the outcome.
Yeah. Well, Diana, I'm going to summarize some of the amazing things you said today and give the audience some take homes. So we started with a little bit of burnout, and we talked about physical and kind of mental or emotional manifestations. And when something doesn't seem right, it could be something as simple as your sleep is off or grinding your teeth, joint pain that's just not normal for you. But it could also be the fact that you're not telling jokes. Right. You're just not who you are. All can be signs that we're slipping down that pathway into burnout. And, fortunately for you, it led to inspiration and coaching. And we started talking about coaching and how we interact with people. We talked about principles of awareness and presence and creating space, which led us to patient interactions and how we do those same things with our patients and how that really helps build relationships as healers and teachers. And I love that kind of dichotomy of healer and teacher that you talked about. We talked about identity crisis and how a lot of us suffer from being doers instead of just being in the moment and being present, whether it's with our patients or with our families or whoever it may be. And we talked about how you help your clients or through physiciancoachsupport.com, how your volunteers, how all of these certified coaches help people kind of address that process of fears and anxieties where a thought can lead to a feeling, can lead to quickly an action or reaction, but try and expand that process and help people find more meaningful solutions. And then lastly, we talked about our mindfulness practices, and you gave us some great practical examples of how to get through a day and how to incorporate sleep and wellness and journaling and gratitude in very practical ways, in a very contemporary way with social media and Zoom meetings and other things, and how we can kind of do all that. And lastly, we talked about picking up those around us, particularly women in surgery, Latinas and Blacks in surgery, and picking them up and opening to a brighter future for diversity in our field. So lastly, I just want to give people the opportunity, or you to tell them, physiciancoachsupport.com. If there's people out there, physicians, surgeons who are looking for help, looking for someone to talk to, it's a great resource. And let us know if they need to know anything else about it.
No, it's confidential. I mean, some people feel nervous. People sign a contract, it's confidentiality agreement, so that everything you say is confidential. You can keep the Zoom camera off or on if it makes you more comfortable. You can put your name as Mickey Mouse if you don't want to give your name when you make the appointment. I mean, you really want to make it friendly to just get the support. But just really, we're there. I mean, there is no judgment. I know it's impossible to get your mind around, like, we're not going to judge, but there really isn't. And go on the site, just learn more about like coaching, what it is, what it isn't, really learn about or read the reviews from physicians I've used it, like what they experience. I mean, those are verbatim. They don't have their names, but they're verbatim what they have told us after their appointments. Also what coaches have felt after helping physicians. It goes like full circle. It's not just one way we give. Like, we receive like these amazing gifts of helping other people. And that was something that was very surprising. I didn't even think that would be something to think about. I just kept thinking about who we're going to help. But the physicians or volunteers have told me how much it was such a meaningful interaction for their whole week. It made their whole week. They really felt grateful. They really, want to serve. And, I have a wait list of people to be there. So it really is just something kind of magical. I hope it can start you in some process of your wellness, of getting to a different place, because you're not overwhelmed. You're not, anger and hopelessness. You're not that. We just have to find, again, your way back to home, which is inside, and it's love, and it's all these amazing qualities inside. So there's other resources there too. There's a lot of stuff on the side that hopefully can just brighten up your day, make you smile, or just a different avenue of other resources that could be helpful. So look it up. Again, check us out. It's free, it's confidential, it's peer-led. And I mean, I'm just really grateful for this amazing opportunity to speak with you, that we found each other, that we connected, and, that really, again, you're such an example. You're such a, every time I find people like that you're doing what you're doing with your platform, with, just, your chair. I mean, like, It's like you're like a big dog, and you're so human, so humble. It's like, yes, like people, you can be that. You can strive to let go of the ego and just be human and just acknowledge the people without all this other stuff. Um, that we don't need all these layers. It's just being present and speaking to people, speaking to colleagues. I mean, what a gift, and what a gift that you have all these leadership positions and you use that for such good. I mean, that is just like, oh, makes me all warm and fuzzy and want to explode, with just like so much love and gratitude that, like the world is magical. I mean, that's the end of it. It's just amazing.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And it's definitely a process. It's a continued practice, and I know we're working through it together. So thanks for all you do. Thank you for spending the time with me in this conversation. I know people are going to benefit from all the things we talked about tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil.